Hey, Jabba Jaw. Jabba Jabba.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
I got you.
Oh, you got me? Okay, I need to turn up this
I
volume a little
hear you.
bit.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay,
Sounds good.
awesome. Cool. All right. So I'll go ahead and start off with a quick little story about why I feel this way. And like I said, I don't believe the government should get involved. I'll go ahead and say that.
Okay.
I've changed my beliefs, from college to now because of what the government has done and what the government has proven that they cannot do. They're not capable of taking care of finances. They're horrible. But I do hope.
Oh, no, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. So I already know this. That's kind of out there, and I think a lot of us can agree. But in a perfect world, or what I believe that we should do, there are solutions that I believe that we can use to make sure that people get the health care that they need. But with my quick story, when I was just graduated high school, I had got appendicitis. My dad was required to purchase health insurance for me until I either got out of high school. If I elected to go to college, I go to college. He still has to pay for it. We go to the doctor because my stomach was killing me. The doctor did the rebound test. I was a lifeguard. I knew what the rebound test was at the time. I did the rebound test on myself. I had no pain, but the doctor said, I really don't know. You're going to have to go to the hospital. So I go to the hospital, and on the way to the hospital, the doctor called and said, you don't have insurance. I get my appendix taken out. I'm not in the hospital, but for a couple of hours, not even 12 hours, I'm in that hospital. And I get out, I recover, and I have to go talk to the financial aid department. And she told me that had there never been insurance, your bill would be so much cheaper. My bill for the room was over $6,000. And she said it should have only cost you a couple $100 a night. And I wasn't even in there for a night. My bill was $20,000. I got financial aid through Outreach Ministries, and they paid for 100% of my bill. So that's why I feel that insurance is a fraud. What it is this is my grandparents. All these are my grandparents' insurance bills and the explanation of benefits, EOBs. What insurance does is that they actually have agreements with these medical facilities, with the doctor's offices, with the hospitals, with the your eye facilities, and they have agreements with how much they can charge. So, for example, one of these bills that my grandmother got was about $20,000. No, $40,000. And the total that she ended up having to pay, that insurance approved, was 10. So the bill that the hospital gave her was $20,000. Insurance said, no, you can't charge that. You have to pay 10. We'll only pay 10. My grandmother was responsible for about $1,000. And even some bills, they say, no, we're not going to pay this, but you can only charge our patient $45 or $100. So it's because of this bullying that these insurance companies do that they have to throw. They're not able to get the amount of money that it actually costs for these services. So to fix that, what the government can do is do what the insurance companies are doing. We already have this. They go in and they negotiate. They regulate the price. Okay, if we got rid of the insurance companies, insurance has overhead. They have to pay their people. They pay their people to hold on to our money. And if the government comes in and says, no, we're going to regulate this, we're going to be involved. The doctors are going to make sure that we're going to put the lives of our people in the doctor's hands. They're going to make the decisions on what gets covered and what doesn't get covered, and make sure that these hospitals get paid. We can have a government-ran healthcare, which is a little bit different from health insurance. In that respect, though, that there's not an actual company that's running it. It's the government saying this is what you can and cannot charge. But if that makes any sort of sense, and I'm nervous as hell as this being my only second debate, that I'll pass it back on to you.
Well, it kind of sounds like you're saying the problem with insurance or with healthcare costs is that you have something of an oligopoly. So what we need is a monolithic monopoly to control healthcare prices. And does that?
Yeah, right. So kind of like how our power bill, power and water, we don't get a choice in who our power company is. Our power company is who's in our area, because we don't want a bunch of power lines going from house to house. We can have a choice of our cable and internet. That's underground or antenna wise, but through power, we don't want a bunch of power lines for no reason. So yes, someone of that monopoly of healthcare.
So can you think of a monopoly that the government runs that you think it does really well with, like the post office?
It's going back to the post office. The post office is dying. That's not really a good argument. The post office is dying. We have email, we have instant messaging, and that's all going away. The only reason why we still have a post office now is that old people, they don't want to get on the internet. They don't want to learn these new technologies.
The reason the post office used to control everything, right? Used to have packages, mail, and it still has a monopoly, the legal monopoly on sending a letter through the mail. You cannot send a letter. You can send one first class overnight, pay $20 for it if you want to do that. But to send a letter, nobody can compete with the post office legally. And the post office loses something like $1 billion every year. And this kind of goes to the comments that some of the interactions that were, I think, in the Facebook post, the original.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the problem there is that the post office, when it was a monopoly and controlled everything, and this is before email, it was terrible. Like, you would stick your package on a USPS truck and just get down on your knees and pray that it got somewhere, sometime this year. And it wasn't until FedEx came in with overnight shipping and, private industry, and they started to just beat the hell out of the post office, because if government allows anybody to compete with it, they're just going to get crushed, and that's why they usually make it illegal. Liberty Dollar and money, all these things. So, but anyways, getting back to the idea of the monopolization of healthcare through price controls, I think just the idea of the government setting price controls in an industry that is so vital, right? You talked about your appendix. So I think the government setting price controls. Yeah, we have. Insurance can negotiate prices with their providers, but those are purely voluntary, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not 100% sure on how you have in what was called in network and out of network. So when you're in network, yes, that what you charge is that's the agreement, and yes, you're right, it is voluntary. But then out of network, that's they either take it or they don't, and they make the choice of taking it.
Yeah. So when a provider takes insurance, like so this is a great example because I just got this in the mail today. This is my brand new insurance. It's effective today, right? Effective today. It's California. It's Anthem. It's California self-insurance. So I'm teaching at some classes and economics courses in California, and woohoo, I got my stuff right now. What this was is you were offered like 10 different options. Each one had a different monthly premium, and they renegotiated and they offered you two. One was a zero premium with a 20% copay, and one was a like $10 copay with a $95 a month. And I said, well, if that's the option, I'm just going to take the max, right? I'm going to go full on. I'm just going to abuse the hell out of the insurance, basically, is what I'm going to do, right? I got this pain here. I'm an injured runner, so just leave it at that. But the options were, I could have gotten the $5,000 deductible. So this is before they renegotiated the whole plan. This is last year's thing. They had these different options, and if you get the higher and higher deductible, then you could actually get money back every month. So If I had the high deductible, I would have self-insured. I would have got the $5,000 deductible, and I would have got $500 a month in $600, I think, returned to me, right? So this would have been more like a market thing where, yeah, catastrophic. This is what insurance is supposed to do, right? Catastrophic plan. I get a appendicitis. I break my leg. I get in a car wreck, and my PIP doesn't cover it or something like that. Then I'm going to get taken care of, right? I get cancer, whatever it is. But for small things like I go to the doctor, I can just take that $600 and put it into an MRA or something like that, and I'll just go pay cash, right? And that keeps things cheap. And that's really what insurance should be. Now, what we're talking about here is the idea of controlling costs. That's just a very dangerous idea. We've seen price controls under Nixon, long gas lines. That's the kind of thing we don't want at a doctor's office, right? You can look at price controls in other countries where the government really, once you get give them the government control on pricing, the government will just eventually take over the entire industry. And that is the end goal. Harry Reid himself said it, that Obamacare, the ACA was just step one to universal healthcare or universal
health insurance, essentially. I mean, the government's already ruled that in the event of an emergency that the hospital can't deny you. You go in with your arm chopped off, or you go in with appendicitis. The doctor, I didn't have any money. I was broke. I had a Volvo, 1988 Volvo that was a POS in my name. And they didn't say, nope, you got to leave. We're not going to take care of you. So we do have that. Our people are okay. Nobody's going to, as long as they go to the hospital and they're actually sick and dying, they're going to be okay, as long, unless they're terminally ill. But what we're discussing is what happens between insurance, actual insurance, and what happens with the providers. So what happens is that the providers, they say, or the insurance company tells the provider, okay, well, this pill, the insurance says, okay, well, the provider says, okay, well, this pill costs $10. So the insurance says, no, you can't charge that $10 to our client, to our patient. So they can't charge me the $10. And insurance says, we're not going to pay the $10 for that. So what the hospital and doctor's offices do is say, okay, well, if you're not going to pay that $10, we use 100 pills a day. So we're going to have to move that $1,000 to somebody else, which would be me, the cash paying, because I don't have an agreement with the hospital system. I don't. So I'm going to have to pay that overprice for that pill that we could have went to the drugstore, or what it actually cost of $10 to actually get the medical drug that I need. Saline bags the same way. The insurance only says, no, we're not going to pay for saline bags. So then the hospital says, well, we're going to have to give it to the cash paying patients because they're the only ones that are going to be able to pay it. I can't negotiate that. And sometimes they will. We negotiated with our bill before and
you can absolutely negotiate your bill with a hospital or a provider or something. If you're paying cash, they'll usually give you a discount. They'll work with you most of the time. They like you.
It's only typically 10. I mean, my fiance, she works in a dentist office. My uncle, he is a dentist, and I had a friend. We're no longer friends anymore, but he's a dentist, and then dealing with my grandparents' health issues for the last 5 years, and then going through with what these insurances do. I've seen a lot, and it goes back to my mom actually called me crying sometime last year because she got a bill for $40,000. The bill was $40,000, and she started shaking. She's calling me crying. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I got a bill from Mary Black Hospital for $40,000." I said, "Okay, I'll fix it." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, there's something wrong with the insurance. I called them, sat on the phone for about 10, 15 minutes. They said, we billed the wrong insurance. We didn't bill the right one. We're going to fix it. They sent back the bill. Insurance approved, said, we approve $10,000. So we're going to pay you that 10, but then you can only charge, in the bill it says you can only charge our patient $1,000. So we paid $1,000. So how did the bill go from $40,000 to $10,000 with us paying $1,000? So $10,000, $10,000 or $11,000 on a $40,000 bill. The only reason why that happens is because insurance bullies these hospitals and says, no, you can only charge this, and this. We're only going to pay $100 a night for this room. The room really costs $600 to $1,000 a night. So what do they do? It goes back to my previous points. They bill it off to cash paying patients. Yeah, I can get a 20% discount, but what's 20% on $20,000, $40,000?
Well, government is even worse. Insurance generally pays about break even cost on average, and I used to listen to
below.
Well, government pays well below. So Medicare, Medicaid.
Well, yeah, Medicaid, yeah, Medicaid. That's a whole other funny subject on dental care.
And I mean that's just one. That's one. The Medicare, Medicaid is about what 40% of the U.S. budget right now. The income that the government brings in. Social Security is 40. The debt is another almost 20. So those three programs right there take up almost all the money the government spends. But the problem with health insurance is it's called the principal agent problem. Is when you have health insurance, you don't really care what it costs. And I mean, we can give examples. I got cortisone shot last year, and I got another one this year. It didn't work this year, but I got it right in the butt, right, the hamstring attachment. And he said, "Let's get a cortisone shot." Did I ask how much? No,
of course not.
No, I had like top of the line insurance, right? I got government insurance. I have state insurance, and I didn't even ask how much. I had orthoscopic knee surgery. I said, I want my knee fixed. Whatever. I'm sure it's not going to be that much. That was my line of thinking. I'm like, cortisone shot, probably $2,000. I'd pay 10%, $200. Let's do it. Right? I don't really care.
But let's think about it. That $2,000 that they charged the insurance said, no, insurance, this is how much it's going to cost.
Well, I saw a bill. It was $3,600. I thought, whoa, right? And so they have these prices negotiated with the insurance company, and the insurance company and the medical provider, they are voluntarily agreeing to these prices, though, right? So,
which then it goes back to my point is then they move those prices to people like me who can afford insurance. I have insurance. I have the worst insurance I could possibly buy because that's all I can afford every single year. I live in South Carolina, and we currently, according to my agent last year, we can't buy insurance out of state. So I'm limited by that. I can't.
The lines around the states, right? Remember Donald Trump, the lines around the states? No competition. So one of the great things that he's talked about in his campaign, right?
No, absolutely. But that's the issue is that, and every year my insurance agent calls me and says, well, Coventry One was the first one I had. I paid $200 for top tier insurance. Platinum's top tier. I had Gold, which was a great insurance plan. And then he called me the next year. Okay, well, Coventry One went out of business. We're going to go to Blue Choice. Okay, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, it's going to cost you $500 for Gold. Yes. Well, what's silver? $300. Okay, well, I'll pay $300 for silver. Then this year he called me and said, okay, well, they no longer offer silver. So do you want gold or do you want bronze? Which one do you want? Well, how much?
I would say.
So it goes back to that. So I'm limited. So with this Obamacare, I'm limited. And that's why if we're wanting to replace it, I rather repeal the entire thing. But if we're going to replace it, I'd rather replace it with something where the government keeps their hands out of it, because we know that the government digs into Social Security and Medicare. George Bush did a lot of that. He borrowed a lot of excess from that.
And so did Clinton. So I mean, they all do.
I mean, and a lot of them do, and I think they're supposed to put money back into bonds. I'm not
the lockbox. Sure. Remember Al Gore, Saturday Night Live? Al Gore versus George Bush. Strategery, lockbox.
that was like way before I got into politics.
Year 2000. It's great. Yeah, got to go find it online.
I will. And that's why I like talking about these kind of things. Y'all are easy going. I'm not as smart as any of y'all. But and that's why I like having no, but I like having these discussions because you learn. But it goes back. But you had it right that I like the monopoly side of it, because we're going to we have to take care of people. Claim we're the greatest nation in the world. And I watched an ad earlier today actually where the guy said, no, we're not the greatest nation because we don't innovate. We're always afraid to speak our minds. We're afraid of this, that, and the other. And
now that was Jeff Daniels, right?
I don't remember the name.
From a
I'm
TV
sorry. I'll have
show,
to find it.
movie,
It might have been. Yeah, I think it sounds like
where he's kind of sitting back and he's being quiet, and then he gets up
then
and
the
starts.
guy, yeah, and then the lady like holds up the note. No, we're not. No, we're not. I thought that was a great speech. Do you remember that part? That's the where he started to talk, and he was telling people to shut up
Yeah.
and whatnot.
So let me
But
just say, I do think, and I actually have a challenge. I think the United States is the greatest nation on the earth in history. The idea that we can innovate,
we can be.
basically all the medical advances ever come from the United States. All the good doctors around the world, in Mexico. I mean, a lot of those doctors are trained in the United States.
And then they go back, absolutely. And when you go to when you go to the doctor's offices, they're from other nationalities. And
you can get you can go get your surgery if you have like you need open heart surgery. You can go to India and get it done it's called medical tourism. There's an actual name for it. People do it. There are companies that will help you with it. You can go to Mexico and get all kinds of, get your teeth fixed, all kinds of stuff. I had a student, her friend went to Panama, got for $18,000, got the full mouth replacement, to $80,000 in the US, right? But most of that is regulations and government. There's insurance costs and, of course, cost of labor and all that. But most of that is just overhead that comes from regulations and protecting themselves and just stuff that is really completely unnecessary and not part of the actual procedure itself.
Correct. Along with all the regulations and all these.
But yeah,
but then like kind of the one thing I can talk a lot about is the dentistry. Talking to my fiance, I think a crown actually only costs about $50 to $100 to make for the office, no matter where it is you go. But they charge upwards of $1,000 to $1,200, and it's because insurance only pays a couple $100 of that. I mean, they have, of course, the doctor's office they have to pay their doctors, they have to pay their staff, they have to pay the front. So there is overhead, but why do we need to pay another company to hold on to our money? Why does this other company who has all this overhead, who's going to have to spend all this time negotiating to make sure that we get the best deal possible, when we can go ahead and cut that middleman out and say, okay, we got rid of the insurance companies. The insurance companies are no longer involved. So you need to make sure that your prices match what everybody else is doing. Yeah, you can charge it. I mean, yeah, getting my appendix taken out, would I have paid $10,000 to get that done? Yeah, I want to live. I don't want to. That was some of the worst pain I've ever been through. I thought I was going to die. I've never been in anything like that.
No, you did say charity took care of it, right? Charity
did. Charity.
Yeah, most of these hospitals have that. Now, I would say you mentioned appendix. I remember reading a story about a year ago about somebody that had an appendix done and they didn't look, and they just there was 30 hours between when they were going to go to the hospital and when they actually had it done. And it was in San Francisco, and you can get your appendix taken out. And the variance of costs is just mind-blowing. It's something like $3,000 if you get it done 3 hours outside of San Francisco, but it can be up to $100,000 in San Francisco.
And see, and then now you just proven a point, is that there's no regulation on that, and that's not necessarily fair. The doctors go above and beyond, and our nurses go above and beyond the call of duty when they're doing that. My neighbor's a nurse. She's a great lady. We'll sit there and talk about my grandparents all day long. If I have questions, I go to her, and I know that they're up 12, 14 hours a day trying to take care of our patients, take care of us. But because going back to being the greatest nation, we can be the greatest nation. And it's taking care of our poorest people and taking care of our people that will make us that great nation. And there are other countries, I don't want to bring in all the other countries that have universal health care. That the way that it's done and the way that we see it is that it being abused. That's not what I'm talking about. I understand that happens, that everybody brings up the wait times to get something done in Canada.
Yeah, your grandparents would be dead, most likely.
Well, kind of going back to the college paper, I went deep sea fishing, and one of the boats that docked beside us, they were actually from Canada. And when I was doing my project, I interviewed them for my project and asked them about that. And they said that it's nowhere near as bad. Yes, if you need to go to the doctor's office for a cold, it's going to be bad. You're going to have to wait. But if you need open heart surgery, you need a heart transplant, it's just as bad over here as it is over there. I mean, there aren't hearts all the time. You're going to have to wait. If you need a heart bypass surgery, then yeah, they'll take care of you. But if you need a heart, you're going to be put on the list like everybody else. Same
Well,
thing as here.
they are with massive emergency. Yes, it's mostly covered. Although you can still, there's a lot of myths. You can still go bankrupt in Canada. You still pay out of pocket for a lot of stuff. But a lot of Canadians, if they have some kind of problem, a lot of them come to the U.S. because they just can't get it done. In fact, the Fraser Institute, healthcare wait times hit 20 weeks in 2016, an all-time high. I listened to Stephen Molyneux a lot, and he went to the Oklahoma Surgery Center. He's Canadian. And it's because he had this massive growth like up under his brain. They went and, weeks and weeks. They finally get it checked. Weeks and weeks. Okay, it's not cancerous. But you're going to have like 16 weeks before we can get this thing removed. And it's growing and growing. And he just said, F it, I'm just going to go to the United States. Boom, he gets it done, right? Cash, the Oklahoma something medical center, I think they're all cash. They have like a menu price of how much things cost before you walk in, all those things. He just got done. He decided to pay for him out of his pocket. Louder with Crowder, he did an experiment. He, like he had a broken wrist. He goes in. Well, he didn't actually get anything done.
Oh, he didn't get anything done.
No, Molyneux did, but Crowder went into the hospital on Sunday, and the clinics are all closed on Sunday. So they told him on video, he's hidden video, but they told him, don't get sick on Sunday because forget about it. You're going to spend 20 hours in the ER, right? I went to the ER. I spent 3 or 4 hours. I didn't have insurance. I just moved back to Seattle. I tripped and banged my knee on the sidewalk, and it was like a $1,300 bill. And I was like, look, I can't pay for it. I just got no job, all that. And yeah, it was taken care of by them, right? The charity service. So
Right.
all this stuff is all taken care of. But I just really getting back to the idea that healthcare costs should be regulated by the government. I find that terrifying that the government should institute price controls on something that's so important.
Well, think about
because how would they figure it out, right?
If you're afraid of that, think about what would happen if the government didn't have any sort of control over your electric bill. The electric company, they own the power lines, they own the coal, they own the nuclear, whatever sort of power that you have, unless you have solar power. But they own the means of getting the power. If because of the government, they can't say, you know what, I want to charge $1,000 a kilowatt. They can't do that. They have to go in front of the local government and say, well, we need to raise prices because of this, this, and this. We have Duke Energy, and a lot of people talk horrible about them, and I love them. They'll come in and they'll monitor your home. They'll say that you need to do this, this, and this, and they'll even give you free light bulbs. The CFLs, the first time now, they're giving out free LEDs if you request it. So they look to lower your power bill. But think about if they said, you know what, no, we're going to raise the power bill. We're going to raise the kilowatt. It's only because of the government saying, no, you can't do this. You have to ask us and give us adequate reason. And the reason is because people are desperate. If they came up and said, you're going to pay 1,000 kilowatt an hour, I turn the power off. I can't afford it. I'm not going to be able to do it.
Well,
and we would be forced to do that.
Well, I disagree. Companies don't charge the maximum price. They charge the maximum profitable price. But
power, you need power, right? I mean, do you need it?
Yeah, but think about that today. Companies don't want to charge. They don't want to gouge the crap out of you.
But
why would they, right?
But here's the thing: is normal companies, gas stations are an excellent example of this. They're not going to price gouge you because you can just go right down the street. They're a dime a dozen. Wherever you can buy at Spinks, we have Spinkses and Exxons and whatnot. Wherever you can buy at Spinks, you can get at QT. It's going to be right around the same. If Spinks is 20 or 30 cents higher, I'm not going to buy from Spinks. I'm going to go straight down the road and go buy from QT. With power, I can't. Yeah, Duke Energy says, well, I'm going to raise your power bill. We're going to charge you $500 or $100 a kilowatt. Well, the only thing I can do to solve it is somewhere where it's not Duke Energy. So I pack up and I leave and I go somewhere else. So now I'm going to have to close on my house. I'm going to have to move everything. It costs me thousands of dollars to do all that. And I might make a profit on my house, or I might not make a profit on my house, and I go and move somewhere else who has cheaper power. And now they say, well, you know what? Duke Energy just went up, so we're going to go up. Now I have to move again. So there's no, the reason why they don't do that is because they're not allowed to do it because of government control. They can't charge wherever they want to charge because the government realizes we don't want everybody saying, I want to be a power company. I can't go to the bank and get a loan to start a power company. I can start a solar company, and I can start a wind turbine company if I can prove a concept, but I can't go out and put power lines out and give service to people because the government also doesn't want a bunch of power poles all over the place. They don't want 2 or 3 power poles, 5 or 6 power poles, and power going to all these houses. It's not safe because in the event of a storm, you're going to have let's say there's 6 of them, you're going to have 6 companies on top of each other trying to fix a power line. And all these power lines getting all tangled up, and it wouldn't look right. So that's why that's monopolized. That's why we have that type of monopoly. There's not just one power company. There are several. In my area, we have Duke Power, and we also have Blue Ridge Electric. Those are the 2 that I deal with. But
it could. I just show this. This is Primal Prescription by McGuff, a ER doctor, and Bob Murphy, who is a healthcare economist, the Mises Institute. So I highly recommend it because we're got like 14 minutes left. I would do,
I
understand. So I understand but that's a whole different market power. I could say today
those are emergency services. It goes back to those are the emergency services. We have to have it. If I'm sick and I'm dying from appendicitis, they told me had I waited another couple hours, I would have died. That's what it was going to be. I was going to die. I can't call St. Francis. Okay, how much is it going to cost to get my appendix taken out? Well, depending on the procedure, this is going to cost this. And then I can't call Mary Black and say how much is going to cost to get this done. You're having a heart attack in a movie theater, or you're having a heart attack at a baseball game, or you're running. I believe you're a runner. Good for you. I need to do some of that. But you break your leg or you start having a heart attack while you're running. You don't have a choice of what hospital you're going to. You're not calling, even though you have insurance that can pay it. But the hospital that you go to might not be in network. So when you get to that hospital, you might not be in network with that hospital, or you might be in network with that hospital, but you might be out of network with the actual doctors. And that's what people also don't understand is that just because you're in network with this part of the hospital doesn't mean you're in network with that part of the hospital. And that a lot of that ends up happening. And we've seen that with my grandmother. I've had to call the insurance company and say, well, we're in network with this hospital. Well, you're not in network with the doctor. Well, wait a minute. They're not under the same umbrella. No, they're not. So, and it goes back to cost regulation. If you cut out that middleman, you take out the middleman's, you take out the insurance company's overhead. They don't pay a light bill. They don't pay employees, and you don't pay these doctors that have been kicked off the board and now either approving or disapproving insurance medical treatments because, oh no, we don't think that this is necessary. We don't think your heart transplant is necessary. We don't think your appendicitis is currently necessary because they're paid. Insurance doesn't want to pay out. It goes back to another debate that I want to do is the hurricane. Those insurance companies don't want to pay out, so they're going to find a loophole. No, well, even though the hurricane happened, we're not responsible because it was flood that caused the damage to the house, so we're not liable for that. Insurance doesn't want to pay. You don't make money by paying. But if you get rid of them, they're no longer worried about profits. And you regulate. Okay, now you got rid of the insurance company. Go ahead. Yeah, I mean I've already said my point about 5 or 6 times. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't understand why you're talking about paperwork and stuff like that. All that stuff is going to exist in a government system. So you're not going to save any money. What you're going to do is you're going to create inefficiencies because at least in a health insurance system, you have people that can be fired. You know how much it takes to fire someone in the government? It just can't be done. Forget about it. Right. You look at all these scandals with the IRS. What was that's what I was going to talk about, the VA. Right. So we'll talk about the government healthcare system in the United States.
No, there you go. There's a shot in the gun. No, yeah, well, and that goes back. And that goes back to the reason. Right? What?
I was going to say, in Phoenix alone, 1,700 vets waited an average 115 days for an appointment, when policy was no more than 14 days, right? So government says, oh, you can't. And now, how many people got fired, right? How many people got fired from the VA? Zero.
No,
Not a single person.
That goes back to one of the reasons why I don't agree with the government getting involved. It's because of the bullshit like that. That is wrong. Our veterans have done great things. And it goes back to why I moved away from what I now believe.
Yeah, that's a tiny system, right?
No, correct.
That's just a tiny fraction. I mean, you look at the number of people that are veterans, and only a fraction of the veterans actually use the VA because they don't want to use the VA.
They're going to be waiting forever.
So, yeah, and government does price control in those systems, and that's why nobody wants to take. In fact, you look at price controls now with Medicare and Medicaid. A lot of doctors, there's so few doctors want to take it. So
because it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, the government just doesn't pay you. The government doesn't know how to calculate the costs. And so when if government comes in and decides they're going to start saying, an appendicitis should cost $2,000, and they have all these regulations that you have to,
But that's where you do what we do.
Well, you probably do know.
But that's what we do. But that's why we go back to the system of Duke Power and our electric company knows how much it costs to run. They say this is how much it's going to cost for us to run. This is how much our services are going to cost. They know what it's going to cost, and it's going to take the government to work with these people. And maybe even the insurances can be involved. All right, we got some great insurance companies. We'll take the top couple. They've already got the systems in place. We use them as that in between, or we use them as a liaison to make sure that the prices are proper and not price gouged, and that everybody gets the same price. Because at the end of the day, everybody can afford, or a lot of people can afford $500 to $1,000 out of pocket. That's a pretty good amount, even if you're having to make payments on it, because the government's going to be able to get their money. If you can't afford it, you're going to have the money taken out of your taxes at the end of the year. If that happens, and there are also grants that you can get that we've talked about. But the VA, that's a whole other sort topic. I was hoping you wouldn't bring up, but you gutted that one. But that
was actually for another one that I was going to do with
somebody else. That's a great shot. But no, those are all excellent, valid points, and that's why we need to work on. I believe that we can work on these things. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's just not going to happen. We can't make it happen overnight. It's going to take years of gaining the American people's trust, but I believe that we can get to a system where we treat it like the power company, where the power company, and I don't need to reiterate that. I think we're being.
Yeah, I live in Bellevue, just across from Seattle. Seattle actually has a sort of a government run. It's called Seattle City Light. It's run like a nonprofit. It's run sort of like a private company, but it's owned by the city, and they have their own dam, and it's cheap. Now I'm over here at Puget Power, and it's your typical utility company. And the thing is that they want to serve their customers, right? Because even if you're a monopoly, so the idea goes is that even if you're a monopoly, you're always afraid of competition coming into your industry. Now, with you're a power company, the government has given you the legal monopoly, right? So that's a problem right there. The government has granted them the cable monopolies. The government grants them monopolies on providing cable and doing all kinds of things. You can't dig a ditch down the side of the street if you wanted to. But you know what? Technology has really eliminated most of that. Like, who's your telephone provider?
Verizon. I don't even get it.
Do you have a landline though?
No. The only landline I have is at my business, which is we use Charter.
Like hardly anybody has a landline these days, right?
Absolutely.
My parents, they had a landline, and then they had a house fire and all that, and they just got rid of the landline. They haven't had a landline in 15 years almost. I've never had a landline, right? I'm 37. I haven't had a landline in my whole life. So MCI, whatever, Verizon is starting to tear up their line, or just cut them off, right? So they used to have a monopoly in little areas and it costs you like $20 to make a 2-minute phone call to Europe. But now I've got, T-Mobile. I can go use my phone in Europe everywhere.
Yeah,
And so
but
you see with technology, there's a lot of competition.
T-Mobile and Verizon, they're not monopolies. There's other telephone carriers.
Right. And that's kind of my point, is that even with power, you at least have the option nowadays. If your power company wants to charge you $20 per, let's say $1 per kilowatt hour, you probably pay 20 cents, 15 cents. By the way, the lowest, well, we pay less. We pay the lowest, but it is still the lowest price point in the history of the world for energy, right? I mean, it costs, there's a Planet Money thing they did a couple of years ago about the cost of light. And like, it used to be 10 minutes of light would be a day's wage. Now for a day's wage, you can buy almost an infinite amount of light. You can light your house for the rest of your life on what you make in one day almost, or a lamp anyways. And so technology really has done that. And so if your company decided to charge you $2 a kilowatt hour, you say, you know what, maybe I'll look a little heavier into those solar panels or something like that. Then the utility company will come back and say, oh, we mean it. We come back. So just technology really gets rid of a lot of these monopolies. So my contention would be, if we want to reduce the price of healthcare, we need to get people involved. Like, you have to know what you're going to pay, and you have to have that pricing system has to actually go down to your pocketbook, instead of saying, like, what I do is I just say, okay, these are my options. I have a low and then a really low copay. I'll just pay and I'll get the really low copay, and I will go to the doctors every couple days, right? I might as well, because I got this problem, and I think it's helping. But if I were given cash and I could go out and pay for, instead of giving me the insurance, which is like $1,000 a month, I would jump on taking $1,000 cash and going out and buying a super high premium, like a $5,000 deductible. I mean, super high deductible, and just paying, self-insuring. But the way the system is with insurance and stuff, it's the government incentivizes companies to provide you with health insurance, and that's really where the health insurance comes from. Is with the Great Depression, government set price controls on labor. And so since they couldn't give you a raise, instead they gave you health insurance, or, whatever. So really all of these things are, I would say, contributed to government intervention. That's why health insurance health care costs so much, is that, yes, health insurance is part of the problem. But what health insurance does is it lowers the out-of-pocket costs. It incentivizes people to use more medical care. That's shifting the demand curve out, so, and of course that extra price is taken up by the health insurance company. And so you're really incentivizing people to use a lot more healthcare. If you want to get prices down, we would have to go to a cash type system, where Peter Schiff, when he ran for Senate in Connecticut years and years ago, he proposed an idea where he said he would, instead of the government giving company, like, say your company gives you a $5,000 a year plan, they get to write that off, and then they give you the insurance, and you don't pay any tax on the $5,000 insurance plan. Instead, if your company could give you $5,000 cash, tax free, and then you would get that money, and you can go out and buy your own insurance plan, and you would probably buy a much cheaper plan with a higher deductible, and you would pay cash for things, and we could help lower prices. But a lot of the price problems do come from the government intervention, and it just involving the government. And
real quick,
saying government go and I'll just finish saying that government, you just tell us what everything costs. I think that's just going to exacerbate the problem. I think it's going to just destroy the medical industry. So go ahead. You got a minute left.
No. What I was going to say was, after this ends, do you mind doing a private talk? Because I do like talking to you about this. I think this is awesome. I really do. Not necessarily a debate if you want to. Just a private.
Yeah, if you want to add me, you want to do like a FaceTime, Facebook chat?
We can do a FaceTime, Facebook. That'll be fine. I just really like talking about this kind of stuff, because I think this is what we need. It goes back to why I joined this, because we need a group of people, whether we're right or wrong. We need a group of people that are willing to come together and say, hey, this is what I believe. This is an idea. And maybe one day some of us will become president or great government officials and say, hey, this debate that I saw turned out to be a great idea. Because I don't know everything about insurance. I just know what I see and what I feel. Like I said, it goes back to insurance says this is what we're going to pay, and you're going to have to move your cost to the cash payers. But
yeah, so if there is anybody watching, I haven't read the whole thing, but I really love Bob Murphy. So
I won't have to read that one. But I'll talk to you.